Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be back.
Today we're diving into,
Yeah.
you could almost call this a
Yeah.
true crime story,
Mm-hmm.
but it's one that took place back in the 15th century,
Wow.
and it all starts with a murder,
Okay.
a very important murder, in fact.
Uh-huh.
It's the assassination of Louis,
Mm.
the Duke of Orleans,
Oh, wow.
back in 1407.
Okay.
And, this event,
Yeah.
it really had a huge impact on the course of French history.
Oh, I bet.
So to help us unravel this medieval whodunit,
Mm.
we're going to be taking a deep dive today into an episode of the Noble Blood podcast.
Okay, sounds good.
Have you heard of that one?
I have, yeah.
It's a great show.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It's got really fascinating stories about
Yeah.
all sorts of, royalty and nobility and all that.
I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's great.
It's so interesting.
Right.
So,
To understand this whole story, we really need to kind of set the stage a little bit
yeah, if ever.
and go back in time to France
Okay.
in the late 1300s, early 1400s.
Okay, so.
And things were a little bit messy back then, politically speaking.
Oh, I bet.
France was in the middle of the 100 Years' War with England.
Right.
And
Yeah.
to make matters worse, the King of France, Charles VI,
Mm-hmm.
he was,
Yeah.
he was struggling with a pretty severe mental illness.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine that created a little bit of a power vacuum at the top.
Definitely.
And as you might expect, that led to some
Uh-huh.
pretty intense rivalries among his relatives.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone was jockeying for position,
I bet.
trying to gain influence and control.
Mm-hmm.
So in this whole Game of Thrones, there were two key players that emerged.
Okay.
One was Philip the Bold,
Mm-hmm.
who was the Duke of Burgundy,
Okay.
and the other was Louis,
Uh-huh.
the Duke of Orleans, who was the king's brother.
Got it.
Now, Philip the Bold,
Mm-hmm.
he was a pretty shrewd and ambitious guy.
Okay.
He had managed to amass a lot of wealth and land,
Uh-huh.
and he basically became the de facto ruler of France while the king was incapacitated.
So he was really calling the shots.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
He was running the show.
Okay.
But then you have Louis,
Yeah.
who was, he was kind of a different character.
Oh, how is so?
He had a reputation for being a bit of a
Mm-hmm.
party animal, you could say.
Oh, okay.
He loved indulging in gambling, lavish parties, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah. A real playboy.
Yeah, you could say that.
Wow.
But don't let that fool you.
Okay.
Louis was also a very skilled political operator.
Oh, interesting.
He knew how to play the game,
Mm-hmm.
and he was very good at leveraging his relationship with the king to his advantage.
Okay. Yeah, I could see how that would be useful.
He secured royal grants for himself. He got himself appointed to key government roles,
Mm-hmm.
and he started building up his own power base.
So he was basically trying to rival Philip.
Exactly.
Wow, this is getting juicy.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got these two powerful dukes.
Yeah.
Both vying for control.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Well, it kind of was.
Not a bet.
And things really started to heat up
Mm-hmm.
when Louis decided to undergo a bit of a public image makeover.
Oh, interesting. What do you mean?
He toned down the whole partying thing
Yeah.
and started presenting himself as a more mature and statesman-like figure.
So like a PR campaign?
Exactly.
Wow, smart.
And it worked.
Hmm.
He started to gain more influence and support,
Okay.
which of course didn't sit too well with Philip and his son, John the Fearless.
John the Fearless. Now that's a name that sounds like trouble.
Oh, he was trouble.
I bet.
He was much more
Yeah.
volatile and impulsive than his father.
Okay.
And he was not happy about Louis's growing popularity.
I can imagine.
So you can see how this whole situation was becoming a powder keg.
Yeah, definitely.
You've got these two powerful factions
Right.
led by these two very different personalities,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they're both locked in a battle for supremacy.
And all this is happening against the backdrop of the 100 Years' War.
Right, exactly.
So France is already kind of on edge.
Mm-hmm.
And then you throw this power struggle into the mix.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're playing with fire.
It's a very volatile situation,
Definitely.
and it's only a matter of time before something big
Well,
happens.
Okay, I'm hooked. What happens next?
Well, that's where things take a dark turn,
Hmm.
and that's what we'll be diving into
Okay.
in the next part of our deep dive.
Can't wait. All right, so last time we left off,
Right.
we were talking about this this power struggle brewing in
Yeah.
France between Philip the Bold
Right.
and Louis,
Yeah.
Duke of Orleans.
Mm,
And
mm.
things are about to get a lot more intense. Okay. So picture this, right?
Okay.
It's late November
Mhm.
in 1407,
Okay.
It's a frigid Paris night.
I see.
And Louis, he's heading home after a visit with the Queen.
Okay.
And as he's making his way through these dark and narrow streets, suddenly, out of nowhere, this group of masked assailants just jumps him.
Oh, my gosh.
They're armed with swords, axes. They're brutal.
Wow.
It's this vicious attack. And, well, Louis, he doesn't stand a chance.
Oh, no.
He's murdered right there on the spot.
Wow. That's intense.
It's a very public and shocking event.
Yeah, I bet.
It really throws Paris into chaos. I mean, can you imagine the Duke of Orleans, the king's own brother, assassinated in the streets?
Yeah, it's like something out of Game of Thrones.
Exactly.
So what happens next?
Well, immediately,
Investigation is launched.
Okay.
And the provost of Paris, this guy named Guillaume d'Itonville, he's tasked with finding the killers.
Okay.
And it doesn't take long for suspicions to fall on.
I bet I can guess.
You guessed it.
John the Fearless.
John the Fearless.
Yeah.
So there are rumors flying around that some of the assassins were seen wearing Burgundian colors, which were associated with John and his faction.
Yeah.
And then D'Itonville, he makes this really bold move.
Okay.
He requests permission to search the royal residences.
Oh, wow.
Including John's.
That's risky. That's putting him on the spot.
Yeah, it was a gamble, for sure.
Yeah.
But it paid off.
Really?
Yeah, because John, he completely panics.
Oh, wow.
He confesses to his uncles that he was the one behind the assassination.
Wow.
But his uncles, they're horrified, I bet.
They want nothing to do with this. They refuse to protect him.
So what does John do?
Well, John realizes he's in big trouble.
Yeah.
And he flees Paris.
He runs away.
He takes off.
Wow.
So now you've got this city in turmoil.
Mm-hmm.
The Duke of Orleans is dead. John the Fearless is on the run.
Right.
And everyone's wondering what's going to happen next.
Yeah, what does happen next?
Well, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
John the Fearless, he doesn't just disappear.
Okay.
He decides to come back to Paris.
Oh, wow.
But he doesn't come back quietly.
What do you mean?
He comes back with an army.
What?
And get this, he comes back with a justification for the murder.
A justification?
Yeah.
Like what? He's going to say it was self-defense?
Oh, no. It's much more elaborate than that.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
He claims that God. Yes, God inspired him to kill Louis.
So he's saying it was like a divine mission.
That's exactly what he's saying.
Wow, that's bold.
John the Fearless was nothing if not bold.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
So he stages this big public trial.
A trial.
Yeah.
For himself.
Well, not really a trial. It's more like a propaganda spectacle.
Okay.
He brings in this theologian named Jean Petit. And this guy, he delivers this hours-long speech.
Hours.
Defending the assassination.
Okay, and what does he say?
Oh, he basically paints Louis as this evil tyrant who was corrupting the king and a threat to France.
Oh, wow.
He even brings up those rumors about Louis dabbling in the occult.
Oh, yeah.
And he uses that to portray him as some kind of devil worshiper.
That's crazy.
It was a wild time.
I bet.
But it worked.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people bought into it.
Wow.
Especially those who already resented the nobility.
I see.
So John the Fearless,
he manages to spin this whole thing as a righteous act.
Wow.
He's like the hero who saved France from a tyrant.
That's incredible.
And it's just amazing how he was able to manipulate public opinion like that.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
It's a reminder that sometimes perception is reality.
Right, especially in politics.
Exactly.
So, did he get away with it?
Well, not entirely. Because the king, he does grant John a pardon.
Okay.
But the queen and Louis's widow, they are furious.
I bet.
They refuse to accept this justification. They want justice for Louis.
Okay, so what happens?
Well, France is now completely divided.
Oh, no.
You've got the Orleanists, who are loyal to Louis and his family.
Right.
And then you've got the Burgundians, who support John the Fearless.
Oh, okay.
And these two factions, they are on a collision course.
It sounds like this is going to lead to
it does.
Civil war.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was a full-blown civil war.
It's crazy how this one murder just led to all this chaos and bloodshed.
Yeah. It really is.
It's like a domino effect.
Right, and it's not just the two families involved either.
Oh, yeah, the whole country's getting torn apart.
Exactly. I mean, the whole country is suffering because of this rivalry.
And while all this is going on,
right,
what are the English doing?
Oh, they're not just sitting around watching.
I bet they're loving this.
You know, King Henry V of England, he sees this as the perfect opportunity to take advantage of France's weakness.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is like the worst possible time for France to be having a civil war.
Totally.
They're vulnerable.
And Henry V, he's no dummy.
Right.
He knows this is his chance.
So what does he do?
Well, in 1415, he launches a full-scale invasion.
Oh, wow.
He lands his troops in France.
And this is where things get really bad for France, right?
Yeah, this is a turning point in the 100 Years' War.
I remember reading about the Battle of Agincourt. That was a major English victory, right?
It was a decisive victory for the English.
And that was part of this invasion.
Yeah, Agincourt took place during this invasion.
And the French,
yeah,
they were already weakened by their own infighting.
Right. They're not exactly a united front.
And then they suffered this crushing defeat at Agincourt.
It was a major blow to their morale.
Yeah.
It was a devastating loss.
So what happens after that?
Well, the English, they just keep pushing forward.
Okay.
And they start gaining more and more territory.
Geez, this is not looking good for France.
Not at all.
It's like everything's falling apart.
And you know what makes it even worse?
What?
One of the key figures who was captured at Agincourt was Charles, Duke of Orleans.
Oh, wow. Louis' son.
So the son of the guy who was murdered ends up a prisoner of the English.
Right, and he ends up spending the next 25 years as a prisoner in England.
Talk about adding insult to injury. It's almost like a cruel joke, isn't it?
It really is.
I mean, his father's murder is what helped create this whole mess.
Right, and now he's the one paying the price.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's John the Fearless up to during all this?
Well, John, he's back in Paris. He's consolidating his power. He's basically running the show.
Wow. So he's benefiting from all this chaos that he helped create?
Yeah, you could say that, yeah.
So is there any attempt to, you know, try to reconcile between the Orleanists and the Burgundians?
There is, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, eventually they realize that they can't keep fighting amongst themselves.
Right. They've got a bigger problem to deal with.
Exactly. They need to unite against the English.
Okay, so what happens?
Well, John the Fearless, he agrees to meet with the Dauphin, who's the heir to the French throne.
Right.
And he's also the leader of the Orleanist faction.
Got it.
So they arrange this meeting on a bridge at Montereau in 1419. Okay.
It's supposed to be this symbolic moment. You know, they're going to shake hands, put their differences aside, and present a united front against the English.
Sounds promising.
It does, right?
Right.
Yeah. There's a.
But so as John, he's kneeling before the Dauphin. A group of Orleanists. They rush in.
No.
And they attack John.
Oh, wow.
They kill him right there on the spot.
So the peace talks fail.
Yeah, spectacularly.
Wow.
It's like history repeating itself, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like they learn nothing from the first murder.
Right, it's this cycle of violence and revenge that just keeps going.
And I bet this makes things even worse.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, the Burgundians are really going to be out for blood.
Right, and John's son, the new Duke of Burgundy, he decides to ally with the English.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he figures if he can't beat the Orleanists, he'll join forces with the enemy.
Wow. That's a huge turning point.
It is, and it has devastating consequences for France.
Yeah, I bet.
The English, with their new Burgundian allies, they're able to conquer huge chunks of France.
This is like the darkest period in French history, right?
It's pretty bad.
So it's amazing to think how it all started with that one murder.
It really is.
Back in 1407.
It's a reminder that even seemingly small events can have these huge ripple effects.
Yeah, and it makes you think about the choices we make and the consequences of those choices.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes those consequences can be a lot we ever imagined.
I think that's a great takeaway from this whole story.
Yeah, and I think it's something we can all relate to on a personal level, too.
Absolutely.
So there you have it.
Yeah.
The story of Louis, the Duke of Orleans.
A medieval murder mystery.
And the assassination that plunged France into chaos.
A story of ambition, betrayal, and the devastating consequences of revenge.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our show. for more fascinating stories from history.
And don't forget to check out the Noble Blood podcast.
Yeah, that's a great show.
Definitely worth a listen.
Thanks again for listening, everyone.
See you next time.